where you are at. God willing, we'll be continuing our Quran study today, reading from Surah 7, ayah 50 to 75. At this moment, may we all seek refuge in God away from Satan the rejected and from any jinns or humans alike, right? So, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, the dwellers of hell will call on the dwellers of paradise. Let some of your water or some of God's provisions to you flow towards us, they will say. God has forbidden them for the disbelievers. Those who do not take their religion seriously and are totally preoccupied with this worldly life, we forget them on that day because they forgot that day and because they spurned our revelations. So these two past verses, 50 and 51, which I just read, are a prophecy, meaning it will come to pass. The dwellers of hell are the furthest away from God, right, and his light and any of the provisions that God provides, because they've removed themselves from God, from his teachings, and have been too arrogant to prostrate or submit before their creator. And as such, now in a point of hopelessness, they call out due to their spurning of God's revelations. So spurning, and I wanted to kind of look into the actual definition that the messenger used to translate from Arabic to English. Spurning means to condemn, or a more archaic definition is to push away with your foot. So almost like a disgust. And God forbid we ever be like this, but in 51 it says, we forget them, God is saying, we forget them on that day because they forgot that day. And because they spurned our revelations, they pushed it aside with their foot. They looked at it, they saw it, and they pushed it away. They condemned it. And as such, they've found themselves in this predicament, in this prophecy, of being the dwellers of hell, so far removed from the light of God, so far removed from the provisions he provides. And what a horrible situation. However, and you'll see this in the further ayahs that we go down, God willing, you'll see that it's justified, right? And it is beautiful about the verses that God provides and reveals to us that there is an extreme contrast, regardless of where you are in the Quran. You always see the two paths that God shows us all and shows the results, almost like a prophecy of our individual lives, our individual souls. This is what will happen if this happens, and this is what happens if if you submit and if you stray away, right? So even though this imagery of being so far removed from God's light is horrific, more horrific than anything else we can imagine, and we see that here. God gives a contrast in saying, well, that's one path. However, here's another. And we'll see, God willing, we'll see that going on. So I'm going to continue, God willing, verse 52 of Surah 7. We have given them a scripture that is fully detailed, with knowledge, with guidance, and a mercy for the people who believe. Are they waiting until all prophecies are fulfilled? The day such fulfillment comes to pass, those who disregarded it in the past will say, the messengers of our Lord have brought the truth. Are there any intercessors to intercede on our behalf? Would you send us back so we can change our behavior and do better works than what we did? They have lost their souls, and their own innovations have caused their doom. So there's two parts here. A continuation of that bad path, those who stray and spurn the revelations of God, his teachings and his revelations. And also you see this commonly, people through, there is no better way to explain it, through idolatry, find this intercessor that allows them to mentally justify doing bad behavior. We see this most notably, most commonly, because in terms of the majority of people who consider themselves believers, you see this in Christianity with Jesus. We're all saved. Their common statement is, we're all saved if you just believe in Jesus. Well, Jesus is a messenger of God. He was given given revelations, and then he distributed it throughout the world. But God created Jesus, created the message, and allowed Jesus to be the messenger. There is no intercessor. There's no in between. Nobody praised a messenger because the king had to give somebody the front lines a message. Nobody praised the messenger who took the letter from the king to the guy on the front lines. That never happened. So why do we have this illogical separation of where there's a messenger and now he's the intercessor between God? No, he's simply taking a message that God said, take this and go. And now we get this message from God, right? It is God's message. It is not Jesus's. It's not anybody else's. And we see this in Islam as well. People praise Muhammad to a certain degree because he took a message that God had given him to reveal, right? Through Gabriel, right? We should not praise the messengers. We should not praise the prophets, as we all know here as matters. However, there's this illogical creation of finding an intermediary and saying, they can help us. Nobody can help us. God alone judges whether we are righteous or not. Nobody else can help us. All we can do is try to submit, God willing, and strive towards a righteous life. And a secondary point from verses 52 to 53, this is a question to the reader and in part us all. Are we procrastinating to do what we know is right until the end? Like, what excuses do we allow to consume us? This life, as God has given us, is our last chance to grow as submitters while striving to live a righteous life. So God provides a warning to the procrastinators, right? He says, are you waiting until all the prophecies are fulfilled? The day such fulfillment comes to pass, those who disregarded it in the past will say, the messengers of our Lord have brought the truth. Are there any intercessors to intercede on their behalf? So it's all folly. It's all fallacy. They've lived a horrible life, and they think, somebody else can save us. Nobody's going to save us. The only thing that can save us is submitting to God and striving to live a righteous life. So God willing, I'll continue on verse 54, Surah 7. Your Lord is the one God who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and assumed all authority. The night overtakes the day as it pursues it persistently, and the sun, the moon, the stars are committed to serve by his command. Absolutely, he controls all creation and all commands. Most exalted is God, Lord of the universe. There's a subtext here that is written by the messenger. 754, the 6 days of creation are allegorical. They serve as a yardstick to let us know the relative complexity of our infinitesimal planet Earth. It was created in 4 days. See verse 41:10. We can go to verse 41:10 here. God willing. And this is 41:10. He placed on its stabilizers, mountains, made it productive, and he calculated its provisions in 4 days to satisfy the needs of all inhabitants. So this verse proves what the messenger was saying is correct. The 4 days is all it took to create, to calculate everything, to make everything self-reliant and self-preserving in a way that God has created everything. Everything goes through cycles, and we can explain this further going in terms of the elaboration of the universe, right? Everything is tied together. It's sheerly amazing. If you talk to anybody who knows anything about space or just the universe and how the world is implicated in that, like, to give you an example, the moon, right? Like, life would not exist without the moon. Because of the moon, the tides shift, right? Because of its gravitational pull. And because of this massive water, we have a strong wind that moves the evaporated water over to dead lands. So that way things can grow and survive. If we didn't have that sloshing of the water, all the water would be stagnant. It would be a stagnant pond. There would be no movement, and all the evaporation would just go up and go down. There would be no movement. Now, the Coriolis effect may like the rotation of the Earth, may change that a little bit, but not enough to span across the landmass that we have. And then we have the axis of the Earth, right? So it's constantly wobbling back and forth. You have summer and winter depending on different hemispheres. And because of all of that, you have all of this circulation of water going across, and it sparks life. It changes everything. The rotation of the Earth, how close and far away we are from the sun. All of this is so calculated, so impossibly accurate. It is a signature of our Creator, and it is beautiful to see that. And God exemplifies this in 54, saying, it took me 4 days, according to God, to create just the earth alone, to calculate everything perfectly. And we go back to believing in God and believing in His Word, and understanding that, to see the miracles of life and the miracles of the universe as a signature, as a proof. And then He gives us a prophecy of what is to come. Should we stray or should we submit? It further substantiates for us, being silly humans, how powerful that promise, that prophecy is. So God willing, I'll continue. Verse 55, Surah 7. You shall worship your Lord publicly and privately. He does not love the transgressors. Do not corrupt the earth after it has been set straight, and worship Him out of reverence and out of hope. Surely God's mercy is attainable by the righteous. So once again, God's mercy is shown throughout these allegories to show exactly what will happen if we stray or submit. Both paths are laid out by God and by the grace of God. So essentially, if you read the Quran, it's an entire map of our individual futures, regardless of what path we choose. And God has given this out of our mercy. God willing, we don't squander this opportunity, right? God willing, I'll continue. 57, He is the one who sends the wind with good omen, as a mercy from His hands. Once they gather heavy clouds, we drive them to dead lands and send down water therefrom to produce with it all kinds of fruits. We thus resurrect the dead, that you may take heed. Going back to what I was explaining about the creation of the earth, right? Winds to the moon, rotation of the earth, moves land, moves water across vast thousands of kilometers away from the oceans, away from the lakes, thousands of kilometers to lands where it's landlocked. Like where I live right now, I live in Alberta. I think we're 1,600 kilometers away from the ocean. We get rain and snow all the time. It's crazy. It's a miracle. It is just fantastic. And we're not even as landlocked as other provinces and other states in the States, right? But God makes it all possible that happens. And then when it comes down to the fruits, they get the same water, the same soil, yet they're vastly different flavors, different textures, different sizes. You have root vegetables, you have all these different things from essentially the same ingredients, but God makes it all possible. And it's just, it's amazing to see, right? And God even says, we thus resurrect the dead, that you may take heed. We have this every winter, every summer, dead in life. And it is needed. In fact, some of our forests, you see a lot of these forest fires and, people are upset about them. Ironically, a healthy ecosystem, you need these plants to burn. All this dead brush grows up, you burn it all, and now new life just springs out of the earth. It's amazing to look at, and it's amazing to see that God has created everything in perfect order. God willing, I'll continue. The good land readily provides and readily produces its plants by the leave of its Lord, while the bad land barely produces anything useful. We thus explain the revelations for people who are appreciative. So, God willing, I'm not wrong on this. This is an allegory. As God has mentioned, there are straightforward allegories and multiple meaning ones. This one potentially could be a multiple meaning one. However, one interpretation could be seen as there's no sense in trying to work towards something that has a precedent of not yielding fruit. So God has given in the previous context, this is the right path, this is the wrong path. There's no sense of trying to extract fruit out of a bad land. There's no point, right? So you're no different than anybody else. The paths are laid out. No matter what you do, if you choose that path, it will be bad for you. Or if you choose the path of submission, it will be good for you. And that is one interpretation, but God willing, there are many, right? We just hope that we don't use our life towards a vanity, and we do it in terms of prostrating and submitting to God's will. God willing, I'll continue. 59 of Surah 7. We sent Noah to his people saying, "O my people, worship God. You have no other God beside him. I fear for you the retribution of an awesome day." The leaders among his people said, "We see that you are far astray." So going back, God has laid out two paths, yet the people think that they determine what paths are good or bad. They can change the precedent. Noah clearly is the outlier of the community. He is somebody very different. He's an outcast. He's been ostracized from everybody else because he's not playing their game, their rules. He's not practicing idolatry. He submits to God alone. I would imagine it was very lonely. And then on top of that, these people say, "Hey, you're astray. You're wrong." It would take a man of great faith to understand that he is following the truth, to not be swayed by those around him, right? So, and that is why Noah is such a great man, why he was a prophet, right? So the leaders among his people say, we see that you are far astray. And Noah returns in Ayah 61 saying, he said, "O my people, I am not astray. I am a messenger from the Lord of the universe. I deliver to you the message of my Lord, and I advise you, and I know from God what you do not know. Is it too much of a wonder that that a reminder should come to you from your Lord through a man like you to warn you and to lead you to righteousness, that you may attain mercy?" It takes a very strong man to stand up in front of his community where everybody thinks ill will of him, and to stand for what is right and what is truthful, and to stand for God. Should we ever be in a position like that, we will be able to stand as well. But that's a challenge. And God, the people, they rejected him. And I'll continue in Ayah 64. They rejected him. Consequently, we saved him and those with him in the ark, and we drowned those who rejected our revelations. They were blind. So we see this even in daily life. We see people saying what is good is bad and what is bad is good, right? And I would imagine that there is a precedent here. We see this with Noah. We see this with Moses. We see this with Hud, as we'll continue on. It is a precedent to not be affected by the community around you if they advocate vice and evil. We know what is right because God has given us what is right. He is the truth. God is truthful. God is all-knowing. He gives us precedents, and we see it in our day-to-day lives, how accurate his prophecies, his revelations, his teachings are. Keep that in mind and do not be swayed by the community around you. God willing, I'll continue. 65 of Surah 7. To Ad, we sent their brother Hud. He said, "O my people, worship God. You have no other God beside him. Would you then observe righteousness?" The leaders who disbelieved among his people said, "We see that you are behaving foolishly, and we think that you are the liar." He said, "O my people, there is no foolishness in me. I am a messenger from the Lord of the universe. I deliver to you my Lord's message, and I'm honestly advising you. Is it too much of a wonder that a message should come to you from your Lord through a man like you to warn you? Recall that he made you inheritors after the people of Noah and multiplied your number. Remember God's blessings that you may succeed." This is a continuation from the example that God provides of Noah, but also it adds something, and it adds gratefulness. A great way to tie yourself to the truth of God's message is to be grateful, to be thankful, to appreciate what God has given you, and to be constantly in awe. And the messenger has explained ways of doing this, right? We can say, mashallah, alhamdulillah, right? Like, thank God, this is what God has given me. And we do this consistently, bismillah, every time we eat. And these are little snacks, as the messenger has exemplified. These are little things to tie us to gratefulness, to thankfulness, to be appreciative of what God has given, right? It is very easy to be swayed by the difficulties of our lives and to think that life is difficult. Well, this is guaranteed. This is guaranteed that this is not an easy test. But it is amazing if you look at the world around you, how truly blessed and truly grateful we are, right? I've been through many circumstances. I'm speaking about myself in terms of this example. I've been in many times where I thought I was in difficult, dire straits, right? But I've never felt the pain of hunger. I've never had to explain to my children why they can't eat. I've never truly felt thirst. Like during Ramadan, that's one thing, right? That's a sacrifice that we do deliberately. But to be thirsty, to be truly thirsty, to not be able to turn on the taps and have water. And it goes further. I've always had a roof over my head, thank God. And keeping these things, and God provides all these things to all of us, right? Keeping ourselves humble and understanding that God has provided things and switching that perspective is very helpful. And we see that where Hud is telling the people of Ad, right? Remember God's blessings that you may succeed. God willing, and for myself included, God willing, I'll be more grateful going forward and change my perspective in that aspect. God willing, I'll continue. They said, "Did you come to make us worship God alone and abandon what our parents used to worship? We challenge you to bring the doom you threaten us with if you are truthful." He said, and this is Hud speaking to Ad, he said, "You have incurred condemnation and wrath from your Lord. Do you argue with me in defense of your innovations you fabricated, you and your parents, which you are never authorized by God? Therefore wait, and I will wait along with you." We then saved him and those with him by mercy from us, and we annihilated those who rejected our revelations and refused to be believers. We see this time and time again, people mocking religion, mocking God, saying they know what is right. The irony of it all is, people say they believe in science, they believe in this, that, and the other thing. Science changes all the time. All the time. Ask any scientist, it's all good estimated guesses. The one thing that never changes, however, is revelation for millennia. So, and ironically, every time there's a good standpoint in science, it's almost validated by religion, by what we see in the Quran here. So it's funny to see that contrast, that we are holding on to something that is very truthful from the Creator himself. And every time, obviously in our community here, anytime there's something that is validated by the Quran, we get excited, right? The mathematical miracle alone, it's exciting, right? Primitive man, or a younger man, like a couple of thousand years ago, we had no possibility of understanding the complexity of the mathematical code. Even today, it takes a very smart mind to break it down and understand it, right? to its fullest complexity. There are simpler examples that we can understand, but it's just sheerly amazing and proves how great God's all-knowingness is, right? Omnipotence is. So God willing, I'll continue to 73. Another example of Salah, another brother who went before his community. To Tamut, we sent their brother Salah. He said, "O my people, worship God. You have no other God beside him. Proof has been provided for you from your Lord. Here's God's camel to serve as a sign for you. Let her eat from God's land and do not touch her with any harm, lest you incur a painful retribution. Recall that he made you inheritors after Ad and established you on earth, building mansions in its valleys and carving homes from its mountains. You shall remember God's blessings and do not roam the earth corruptingly." A continuation of being grateful and not to turn away from God's blessings and, roam the earth corruptingly, as God has said. The arrogant leaders among his people said to the common people who believed, "How do you know that Salah is sent by your Lord?" They said, "The message he brought has made us believers." And God willing, we'll stop here from my understanding. But just to continue on, it says in 73, God provided a miracle of the camel, right? And people are still questioning, still not understanding. Like, is this guy truthful? You guys clearly see with your eyes what is tangible here on this earth. A miracle, right? I believe the camel didn't eat and drink on certain days, which is very irregular for any animal, even people. And we can think a little bit better than the animals, God willing, right? But this animal was a miracle, and we could all see it as people, the people of Tamut, and they were still questioning through their arrogance. God willing, we don't follow these precedents, and God willing, that's the end.
MashaAllah, brother. God bless you.
MashaAllah, thank you.
MashaAllah, brother. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
MashaAllah.
Oh, MashaAllah, thank you.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Anything I got wrong? I would love to know anything that I got wrong, right?
So
Go ahead, brother.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. It was the pronunciation of Saleh. Brother Justin read it as Salah, if I'm not mistaken. It was like, just wanted to correct that it's pronounced Saleh. MashaAllah.
Saleh.
Yes, MashaAllah. Yes, that was the messenger which was sent to Samud. Yes.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, MashaAllah.
I appreciate that.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, well, one thing I wanted to say regarding the verses we're reading, right? All these people that were sent by God as messengers had to persevere through all this persecution and insult. I mean, imagine being a person of moral and virtue and righteous messenger from God, sent with, a heavy message and a duty. And then, receiving this kind of response, across the board for every one of them throughout history. And it shows the egos of the people, who are arrogant, that they don't give themselves the opportunity to reflect and think about what they're not able to perceive, and instead of reflecting on themselves and thinking that they might be wrong or they might not be able to comprehend certain things and ask God for guidance, straight away they turn against the messenger, and we see that as a trait of hypocrites. I recently had this experience where this one hypocrite, we kicked him out from this group, but yesterday he gave a sermon, and the entire sermon was directed against the messenger of the covenant, in how the messenger of the covenant lied about God, and how he makes mistakes, and how he is the one who is saying lies about God. I mean, obviously it wasn't worded in this way that he lied about God, but obviously the idea was that what he's saying is wrong, because their understanding of certain verses from the Quran, skewed understanding of certain verses of the Quran, doesn't make them arrive at the same conclusion. Now we know that the messengers of God are given the correct understanding. Specifically, the messenger of the covenant was, commissioned by God to very specifically, give us the information about God's kingdom and Satan's kingdom, and the feud in the high society, and what Satan does and what God does, right? So very, very specific about the formula for happiness and all these things, right? So he was given a very clear understanding of all of these concepts, and just the when you see the sheer stupidity. I think stupidity is not even the the right word, and it's like total. Just I can't think of even the right word to do justice here, honestly. So the
Wickedness,
message,
brother, wickedness.
yeah, wickedness, but also stupidity to the ultimate level, Um,
God says it's like blinders,
yeah,
right?
completely deaf and blind. Exactly, And so the idea was the messenger was talking about how Satan, tries to keep his subjects happy, So he was talking in context about, and this was in the video number 51, audio number 51, I'm sorry, which was the ones that were earlier audios that were recently discovered, right? And the idea, but the idea is nothing new. He has talked throughout about how Satan tries to keep his constituents happy, right? He wants people to continue to do mischiefs on earth. And then, obviously, God has created his system around to annihilate people that are doing these types of things, So, for example, in we read about in these verses that, these people were annihilated. Ad, Thamud, Lot, all these people were annihilated. And God created the systems in place. He sent angels, for example, to annihilate the people of Lot, right? So this is his system, And so likewise, you know, he's talking about AIDS, you know, and how things like AIDS and cancer obviously annihilates people selectively, individually at this time, and how Satan is trying to find ways to keep his people going, and so he's trying to find ways to cure diseases like AIDS, you know. And then you have someone like Adib Yüksel, who's a complete hypocrite. He's arguing with the messenger against what he's saying, and saying, "Oh, but Satan's trying to do so. Why would Satan be trying to do something good?" Like disagree, and he's clearly disagreeing with him, not even like trying to understand. And so this person gave the sermon, and he's saying the same thing, exact same things that Adib was saying, except he's saying it live to us in the sermon. And then the messenger talks about, you know, how God allowed the miracle to come out of Satan's back pocket, and so he gives a brief summary of how he used to work for Monsanto, and then he got offered, you know, to do this work with Anheuser-Busch for converting yeast into protein, and how you know, they told him that it would help eliminate hunger. And this was framed in such a bad manner to say that, oh, he worked for Monsanto, which is like an evil corporation, and then he went on to work for another evil corporation, you know, and like that's the entire sermon, you know. And I'm just knowing how stupid this person is, like I have no reservations stating that, you know, and just imagining like how wise, I mean, God is, and how he has sent messengers to give us such important information that we could really use to save ourselves. But instead, you know, we think that we're so smart, and we think that we know everything, and we think we understand, you know, everything back to front better than anybody else, and just coming and blasting in front of an entire congregation and trying to put down the message and put down the messenger, and to promote doubt, you know, and among the people like that, you know. So we see, I mean, so it's the same thing, you know. I mean, doesn't matter, you know, you can call yourself a submitter or not, you know. If you're doing the same thing that other people are doing, you know, you cannot fool God when you promote doubt like that, you know. So the thing is that obviously we as human beings, instead of you know, pointing at the messenger, like if these people they actually look at the message and try to understand the message, and try to ask God to guide them and turn righteous, instead they turn against the messenger, and they turn hostile against the messengers to the point that they like actually killed these messengers, you know. So yeah, I guess just wanted to share my thoughts about this, you know, and what it reminds me of when we read these verses, that the human being is just such an egotistical creature that, you know, the arrogance and the ignorance, you know, like really is a huge enemy for us humans. And we should always try to remember that, you know, I mean, God is so merciful to us and kind to us that he sends us the message and messenger, and people being so, I mean, arrogant and unappreciative, you know, instead, you know, instead of using their intellect to understand and reflect on the message, I mean, they just turn against the messenger. It just hurts themselves, basically, you know. Yeah, the word that was kept coming to my mind was moron, but I didn't want to say.
Yes, mashallah, brother. I mean, very well put. And the thing is that, you know, these people, I mean, these hypocrites are in different shapes and forms, and we're dealing them, I mean, on a daily basis with them, you know, at place of work, or some other places. And the worst of these hypocrites ones that they say that they are submitters, and those are the worst types of hypocrites, because they are, they say that they have seen the message, but actually they haven't seen the message. And the problem is that not only they don't see the message, but also they start to create doubt and to create lies about the message, about the messenger, and start to create a vice, as the verses of Quran clearly state. They start to create vice on earth. And so may God protect us from all these hypocrites, inshallah, and expose them all, inshallah. And then if there are any that are trying to create animosity among submitters, may God just remove them from that group, inshallah.
Yeah, and the other thing that was interesting for me was, the entire premise of the sermon and this argument was one based on the fact that God says nothing bad comes from God, and then the other thing was to say that the messenger is fallible, right? So both of those things are correct, right? But the thing is, when you say that nothing, first of all, when you say the messenger is infallible, or messenger is fallible, yes, I mean he's gonna make mistakes in following the message, but when it comes to the messenger giving people the truth, he's not gonna fabricate lies about God, because God says, who are more evil than those who fabricate lies and attribute them to God, and he's not gonna say something that is attributed to Satan and attributed to God and switch it, to say that, okay, so literally the person was saying that Satan created AIDS and God is trying to cure it instead of the other way around, right? And so to think, but the whole idea is to say that, well, how can God create AIDS because God does not create evil, right? But we know everything. God created everything, including Satan, right? God created the winds, he created the dinosaurs, whatever, he created fire, he created snakes, he created scorpions. I mean, they bite people. So if someone deserves to be hurt in this manner, they hurt themselves as a consequence, right? But the thing is, these things are created by God. I mean, any creature that we know in this universe has been created by God. I mean, viruses are very primitive life forms. They're microbes, and they have a structure. And so when you're saying that Satan creates, Satan can create something, a form of life that multiplies and everything, you're actually creating an idol next to God, because we know so many verses in the Quran that God says he's the creator of all things, right? So that is just a glaring truth that I think, like, even someone who just has just a very basic knowledge of Quran, should know that God is the creator of all things. And if you think that anybody else can create anything, you're creating an idol. You think that other people can create life.
Or anybody can do anything, particularly without the will of God.
God, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, you can create robots, but you can't create animals.
It's God's will whether you create that robot or not, right? It's not like it's our decision. It's something that we see.
Right. I mean, God is the one who gives you all the knowledge. But what I'm saying is, God allows humans to create certain things, like machines and things, but he he doesn't allow us to create like out of nothingness like life forms, you know, like you cannot create a duck, for example, right?
Uh, the greatest allegory I love is the fruit fly,
Yeah, okay.
right?
God says in the Quran, right? They cannot
Yeah,
create
yeah.
even create a fly.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, it says if a fly takes something of yours and steals
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
you can't do anything about it, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
it's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
You know, I think it's interesting too. It's got to be their egos, because I mean, common sense. Like, I mean, even the point I'm thinking from, like, why would I listen to some person, you know, or like the person giving the sermon who's not a messenger, who's not been authorized? Like, why would I prioritize what he thinks over what the
Mm-hmm.
messenger thinks? You know, like
Mm-hmm.
so he's so special that he knows better, and but I guess it's their egos that
Mm-hmm.
make them like that, and
Absolutely.
yeah, they're wicked people. They're just and I think maybe too, even at the time of the messenger, you know, people who doubt the messenger and his messengership or whatever, maybe these people, I mean, if someone's not gonna or if someone's gonna side or agree with this clown giving the sermon, it just maybe it just exposes doubt
Mm-hmm.
in the messenger, because if they didn't have any doubt, they would like laugh at this person, and because they had people at the time of the messenger that tried doing that, and I mean later they were exposed as hypocrites like Susan, and you know we saw in the third
Adib, yeah.
conference.
what's the
Yeah, and
utility of going? Oh, sorry, go ahead, brother. My apologies.
No, I just wanted to say that, and the thing is that we're not like creating anything. We're just making stuff out of the stuff that which are already created.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, we do not create molecules or the atoms, or you know, we do not create the laws of physics which are like existent among the you know, different parts of atom. Like for example, we haven't created the strong magnetism which is between, you know, protons and neutrons, or the lesser like the less strong, you know, magnetism which is between the electron. We haven't created any of these things. God is the creator of all of these things. We just happen to just like use the things which are at our disposal, and we have been allowed by the grace of God to understand, you know? Because the inspirations of even understanding that, for example, there is a structure called atom, or you know, subatomic particles. Where does it come from? Like, how could we come to this conclusion that there is a you know, smaller structure when, you know, thousands of years ago, you know, Greek thought that, you know, there are only 4 elements, you know, water, fire, you know, wind, and earth. That was their thought, you know, they thought that these are the 4 elements. But later down the road, we understood that these are not the elements. These are just like forms of material which are made of molecules and atoms. But we haven't created anything, and we cannot create anything. We can just make stuff, you know, we can put things together and do something according to the laws of physics which God has created for us, subhanAllah.
Yeah, and you can like modify things. Like for example, you know, you can modify genes of certain creations, you know, to modify their behavior and stuff like that, or their appearance. But you can't create them out of nothingness, right? And then also, obviously, when you say that, if you say that because God says nothing bad comes from God, to think that, you know, God doesn't create things that are you know, bad, quote unquote, you know, like Satan. God created Satan, right? Then you have so many other things, right? There's poisonous chemicals. So you're going to say like, no, God didn't create, for example, arsenic. I mean, who created arsenic? Satan created arsenic, you know? It's like completely idiotic.
And interesting, as evil as Satan is, if you are devoted to God alone, he cannot touch you. He cannot control you at all. Like he can do some tests on you, but then after your admission into submission, you know, you are mashallah protected fully. So he cannot touch you. It's like even though he's evil and he was created by God, you know, he cannot have any influence on you. Inshallah.
Yeah, I mean, think about the venom that you know, all snakes have, for example, right? I mean, the venom that will kill you instantly, paralyze you, and kill you. Now you're gonna say, well, God created the snakes, but He didn't create the venom because it's quote unquote bad, you know.
I think this is
stupid.
This is a fallacy that only the privileged get to understand. Here in the Western world, we don't understand the difficulties of what nature is. Nature is harsh, extremely harsh. In fact, everything is there to kill you, whether it be like the weather itself, whether it be, you know, diphtheria. Like that's a big thing. But like in the Western world, we don't even know what that is. Like you say diphtheria to somebody, they don't understand what that is. You go to some difficult parts in the world, it's a common reason. Oh, I lost X amount of children because of diphtheria, right? It's a privileged thing to not understand that literally everything can kill you. Everything around us is literally constructed to destroy us. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what we have to understand is we cannot extend our lives or bring our lives short by any means necessary unless God wills it. So death is inevitable. We all understand this. Like, there has not been one person out of the trillions of people that have existed over the course of history that still exists today past their interim, right? So we're all going to die, regardless of how we die. It's a test for those who are still around, right? I always find that death brings new life into a family, right? Whether it's the understanding of each other through that difficult time of a passing loved one, or B, where the ego comes out and everybody, you know, to use today's terminology, becomes a victim, says, oh, you know, my life is so difficult because this person died. Well, you can either overcome that and choose righteousness, or B, you can kind of envelop yourself in that pain, in that suffering, and in that fear, right? Which, of course, is a path to Satan. So there's always life from death and death from life, as God has even stipulated in the surahs that we read today. But regardless, it's our interim is already finite. Regardless of how we succumb to our deaths, it's semantics, really, right? So it's not bad, it's not good, it's just it's inevitable. It's the as Brother Masood said, there are laws to the universe that we see and it's tangible. Life and death are part of those laws. We cannot escape it. Regardless of how it happens, it's going to happen. So there's no sense of worrying about those things. As Brother Suleiman constantly said, fear is a tool of the devil. Well, no sense to be fearful of death, considering it's going to come for us all. Just try to live the best you can, the most righteous you can in the in between. If I'm, hopefully, God willing, not misspeaking.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing is, that, you know, retribution. For example, a retributive disaster is something that is part of God's system for people that break God's laws, right? And so for people who are committing these acts of homosexuality, you know, AIDS has been created as a retributive disaster for those people, as the Messenger of the Covenant talked about it at length, you know, several occasions. So naturally, Satan doesn't want his constituents to die. He wants them to, because it discourages people from doing that, right? And so he doesn't want, and it makes them unhappy. So naturally, you know, it's in Satan's best interest that he tries to cure it, right? But it's amazing that with all, I mean, given how how old this virus is now. I mean, this is 2023 now, and our knowledge of science and genetics and everything else has advanced, at such a high level. But God has not allowed anybody to discover any kind of a cure or anything like that, right? But Satan obviously tries. So it makes sense that Satan would, try to find a cure for it, and cancer too.
So, mashallah, for mentioning that, I actually have a question. When it comes to, like, when you go to a shop, they say, like, there is this research institution that supports, like, breast cancer, and they do research. So you want to do, help them. I always, avoid that because I personally believe that there is no reason for people to have cancer, and then it leads to, having this, unless they are like breaking God's laws, and like having research into the institutions and me helping that is not righteous. That's what I assume so far. What do you think, brothers and sisters? In a nutshell, I don't want to help
Right.
something that is, unhealthy, and it's not, it's actually caused by people, on people. It actually inflicts people who are breaking God's laws. I don't want to help research on that, to help that. Based on the discussion we just had, in your comments.
I would love to pine on this one and just simply say that, and God willing, I'm not saying anything wrong. Regardless of the research, if God wants it to be done, it'll be done. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I think the intention of just having goodwill towards people who are sick and elderly, if you see that going towards that, I think that's admirable. Lots of research has gone on that has saved lots of lives through the will of God, right? Like the biggest one that comes to mind is penicillin, right? For mold on a tree, we found out that the biggest problem was like infection. Tons of people died from infection. Now it's almost like, get some antibiotics, you're good, right? Like, so regardless of what happens, I think the intention is the big thing, right? It's always good to, be skeptical and look into things. However, ultimately, if your goal is to have a betterment for your fellow man, I think that's admirable. As long as you don't feel like like there's a more malicious aspect to it, which I don't think there is in this case. I couldn't see it being a problem, but God willing, I'm not saying anything incorrect.
Yeah, for me, like, I guess, it is a matter of preference, what you want to pay charity for. I mean, there's many different causes, and you can choose whatever you want to give money for. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's prohibited, obviously, but it's a matter of preference, right? I mean, if this is something that you're interested in, finding a cure for any of these things, then you would want to contribute towards that, right? But I mean, do I want to contribute towards that? Probably not, Like, for example, do I want to contribute towards AIDS knowing that the information that we know? Definitely not. But the thing is, like, either way, I mean, if God wants to find a cure for something, the cure will be found, whether or not I donate money for it or not, But the thing is, there are people, for me, like, I see there are better things to donate to. I mean, there's people that are homeless, there's people that need water and food and so many other things, right? Among things that, there's plenty of money, believe me, there's plenty of money being invested right now, billions of dollars uh, that are being spent for researching these things. So I don't really think that money is needed. They have a lot of money and there's a lot of research being put in. So money is not really an issue. It's just God is not allowing certain things to be cured at this time, and that's why they haven't been cured. But you can definitely, put your charity towards something where you know that it's gonna yield into helping someone. Like for example, why would you want to give your money towards finding a cure for AIDS or cancer if you know for a fact, let's say for AIDS, I don't want to say anything about cancer, but let's say for AIDS that I know for a fact that God has created it, and cancer too for that matter, as the messenger talks about it, right? So that I mean, I know that if God's not even gonna allow that, so even if you do put your money towards it, your money's just gonna go into it and nothing's gonna come out of it. People are gonna use that money and find nothing at the end of the day, most likely. But there's many other things like diseases and stuff that we know that people can get, and they're not like terminal illnesses or retributive disasters that like we talked about, like infections and stuff. That you can get when you get out of God's kingdom, but you can be cured, right? But yeah, so it's not the straightest answer, but but I guess it's really a matter of preference.
Just to
MashaAllah, brother.
oh, sorry, go ahead, brother Yusuf.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that, so I agree with Brother Suleiman in this sense that since we have it like said by the Messenger of Covenant in video 28, that problems and diseases like, exactly like that's the word, problems and diseases like AIDS and cancer are non-existent in God's kingdom, okay? So what do we understand from that sentence? We understand that diseases, especially AIDS and cancer, which were like named by the Messenger of the Covenant, are, retribution for the people, okay? So if we come to this point of just like sympathy, sheer sympathy with some people who have been who have brought this retribution upon themselves, literally, okay? So we know that AIDS and cancer are the things which are allowed by God, which are created, the viruses and everything. But the thing is that, but we know that cancer is not a virus. It's a malfunction in the, in the reproduction of tissues and cells in the body, okay? But the thing is that, where does that malfunction come from? It comes from the infliction of Satan upon those people, because they have brought that retribution upon themselves, okay? So that's one point. I think that's the first point. And the second point is that I agree with Brother Suleiman in this sense that money is not a matter for these companies or with these institutes. Like for example, this place called St. Jude Hospital, which is doing research into cancer for children. Okay, first of all, the problem is with St. Jude. That you have put the name of like an idol on the name of this hospital, and they think that St. Jude is the one that literally in the end is going to intercede for the betterness or wellness of the people, So that's the first problem. The second problem is that, I think money, as Brother Suleiman says, is not a matter, and us helping them is not going to make much of a difference. And if it was supposed to be found, it is going to be found, And it's not that we try to do something to do the research, and if we don't do the research, the what we call it, the cure will not come up. You mentioned penicillin. I understand what the analogy and the comparison, but the thing is that infections or problems that can be resolved by penicillin are different from the the problems, like for example, like AIDS and cancer, because they are retributions which are going to be like terminal diseases, in this sense that there's not going to be a way back for those people. We know that, for example, AIDS is brought upon the people who have had, so many sexual relationship, maybe with men or with women, but lots of illegitimate, sexual relationships, and that has created, that retribution, because they are going against the law of Quran, which is do not commit adultery, and it has also been mentioned in Bible, so it's a retribution for those people. That's why that has been inflicted upon them by Satan, and that's a retribution. So
Brother, I would just interject there. I think you should be cautious about saying people die for a certain reason because it's retribution. Nowhere does it say that in the Quran. Nowhere does it say that like cancer or AIDS or any other meaning or way of dying is a retribution of God, other than like
the messenger of God, brother. The messenger of God said that in his video, the kingdom.
that cancer is
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
He mentioned
unless
cancer.
yeah.
He also mentioned in the introduction of the book. He mentioned actually the colon cancer. And so he mentioned cancer as a retribution that is inflicted by God. This is the only
Inflicted by
type.
Satan.
No, the first three types are inflicted by Satan. The retribution, the last one, including cancer. Anybody who takes cancer is not in God's kingdom. And that was said by
anybody
the
who dies
messenger.
from cancer will not go to the God's kingdom.
Hold
That's
on,
what
hold on.
the
Well,
message.
yeah, anybody who has cancer is not in God's kingdom. If they die of cancer, they are like going, they're going to hell. And we are not shying away from saying that because the messenger of God said that.
Yeah, I think, brother Justin, I think before you make a strong, stance against it, like I think it would be helpful if you watch the video, The King of Chaos, and go through the reasoning that the messenger of the covenant gives, right? I mean, that's important, right? And so the idea is that obviously he says death itself is a fact of life, right? Like you said, death is a fact of life. We are gonna die, right? But how you die in itself, like it doesn't even matter, right? Look, you could fall off a building, or you could just die in your sleep, right? That doesn't even matter. But when the messenger of the covenant talks about the types of disasters, and he talks about how it will be for people, right? Like, for example, we discussed in these verses about how these different communities were annihilated, right? Through earthquakes and, through these storms and things like that. Now, the messenger of the covenant explains in this time and age how not necessarily these people will die in groups and communities. So, and he says specifically that God has created diseases like AIDS and cancer to annihilate these people, selectively pinpointing, instead of annihilating the whole, because there's good and bad people mixed up, for example, right? There could be. So he says that these diseases have been created. Now, these are different in the sense that death in itself is not a disaster, right? But the thing is that he talks about a point in a person's life. Okay, first of all, he says when a person begins in their journey to submission, right? They'll go through tests, right? So we know about the story of Job, for example. Like, he went through tests, and he was tested by loss of a lot of things, including his health and diseases and everything. But when he passed his test, after a significant period of being tested, he didn't give up on God. He didn't despair from God's mercy, and he continued to worship God alone through all of those things. He passed his test, and so did Solomon. He was tested with abundance of it. And once they pass those tests, then there's no reason for them to suffer and to be tested in anything. So God makes up to them. And then after that, they enjoy a perfect life now and forever, right? And then he says, now that when you enter God's kingdom, you know, there's no diseases, there's no misery, there's no headaches, there's no problems whatsoever. You'll forget what headaches are, and you'll get no traffic tickets, nothing, right? But then you will still be going through your purification process. Now that you have been proven as a worshiper of God, you still have to be polished. So if you make mistakes small mistakes during this process, you will get things like traffic tickets or headache or something like that, which will be a reminder for you that you stepped out of God's kingdom, and then you need to reflect and you need to get back, right? Now, but the thing is, he said the admission test specifically, he says, is distinguished by the fact that it does not leave permanent damage, right? And all these things are restorable. Like, for example, Job's story, everything God says he made up to them, everything is restorable. You're not going to lose arms and legs and things like that, right? But then he says, so there's those things, right? But then talking about a person who has left the path, who has left God's path, or who failed to enter God's path, and he is at a point of no return, right? So for those people, like the people we read about today, those are the people, right? They got to a point that they were so evil and wicked, and there was no hope left for them, and there was no point of return for them to turn to God. And so at that point, it makes no sense for those people to even be alive at that point, and so those people are to be annihilated, right? And so that at that point, when you are at a point of no return, right, then there is the point of the retributive disaster, right? And so there's no difference in people dying in the way that we read about in the verses today, and the people who will die of, for example, AIDS or cancer, except that, you know, one is in his house individually, and then the other is dying collectively, right? But the thing is, when people, specifically talking about AIDS, let's say, right, when these people, they commit acts of homosexuality and stuff like that, as a consequence, and when they have no point of reform, at that point, God afflicts them as a consequence, you know, and as a retribution for these people, right? We know retribution exists, right? First of all, we all agree that there's retribution for the disbelievers, and how, like, these people were annihilated, the people of Hud and Saleh. So we know that this is a system that God has created in place. And the messenger explains and says that in this day and age, things like AIDS and cancer have been created for that very reason as well. So that's the idea, right? Now, obviously, a person who dies of cancer or AIDS before 40, it's not a retributive disaster, because they're still going to heaven anyways. But for people who are dying after 40, it's a retributive disaster. And why? So why is it even the case? Like, for example, someone is dying in their I mean, they could also just might as well die in their sleep, right? But the thing is that they have to be punished for their crimes. Like, we know that your heaven and hell will begin here, right? So if you're a believer and you continue to be righteous, and you have passed your tests, you know, your life, as he says, will get better and better. You'll have perfect happiness. So, and the message explains that the last 10 years or so of your life will be the best years of your life, will be the most happiest, you know. On the other hand, for the disbelievers, it will be the complete opposite, right? So they will go through the suffering and pain and misery that is characteristic of these diseases, right? Diseases like AIDS and cancer are characterized by the fact that the people who suffer from them have a very miserable end, very painful, typically, and miserable end, right? They don't just die in their sleep, for example. Like, they suffer a lot, right? Their systems just deteriorate over time and slowly, you know, and they just go through excruciating pain, both with cancer, with AIDS, you know. And so this is why those specific ways are chosen by God to allow their lives to be terminated in that manner versus somebody, who has an easy passing, right? In case they're, but nevertheless, death is a separate thing, right? But retributive disaster, which eventually results in the death of the person, consequently, is not to be confused with death itself. Like, so we can't say, for example, that no, it's fine if someone got AIDS, someone got cancer, we all have to die, right? It's not the same. Die, yes, we all have to die, but we don't all have to die of AIDS and cancer. We can die of many different things, but it's not even the idea of the mode of death. It's the fact that they have to pay the price and be miserable and suffer through this time. That whole experience, is very different for different people. Like, certain people live very happily and certain people live miserably, and so the reason why those experiences are different is based on their actions, right?
Just to, because like this doesn't add up in my mind, and I'll explain as to why, and hopefully I can get around this because I have a logical blip. Okay. God says that we all have to taste death, right? Like, this is inevitable, right? There has been many righteous people, even in the Quran, stipulated prophets, messengers, who were killed unjustly by the people. These were not easy deaths. These were horrible deaths.
Okay.
From the wrong perspective, you could say that it was a condemnation. I believe the messenger of the covenant didn't come to an easy demise either.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think.
So hold on, just before, because I want to continue this before.
Okay. All right.
So multiple ways of dying. I agree. Death is inevitable. I agree. Many people die from infection, which is not easy. Many people die from multiple diseases, multiple hardships, and some of these people, as even stated in the Quran, not easy deaths.
I think I got your point. So I want you to save your energy so I can answer that question, right? So you brought up, mashallah, you brought up the example of messengers and prophets, including Rashad, for example, of being killed, right? And so we understand that if you look at Appendix 22, right, it talks about Jesus' death, right? It says, Jesus' soul was raised. He was put to death prior to the arrest and the crucifixion of his body. Thus his persecutors arrested, tortured, and crucified an empty body. Jesus was already gone to the world of souls, right? And we have the verses from the Quran. So it says, mercifully, God has given our generation a living example of a person whose soul departed this world, but his body continued to live for 19 months. On November 25th, 1984, doctors at the Humana Hospital of Louisville, Kentucky, removed the diseased heart of Mr. William Schroeder and replaced it with a plastic and metal pump. On the 19th day after this historic operation, Thursday, December 13, 1984, Mr. Schroeder, the soul, the real person, departed this world. Mr. Schroeder died, but his body continued to function with the artificial heart implanted in his body. The world was told that he, quote, probably suffered a stroke, unquote. New York Times, December 14, 1984. Significantly, only one day before Mr. Schroeder departed, he talked with the President Ronald Reagan on national TV and demanded that the Social Security Administration send his overdue check. He was perfectly alert. From the moment he suffered a stroke, quote unquote, he did not recognize the day or time, nor his family members. In fact, Mr. Schroeder was no longer in this world. And then it talks about Jesus and how he was unresponsive, right? And so it says, the facts that one, Mr. Schroeder's soul departed on the 19th day after the operation, and two, his body survived for 19 months after, are uncanny reminders that God wanted the world to know the parallel between Schroeder's situation and the proven account of Jesus' departure prior to the arrest, torture, and crucifixion of his soulless body. So Jesus' example is a very classic example of how a righteous person will die, right? So with this example of William Schroeder, God is showing us that for you, as a person who is going to be stabbed brutally to death, right? You're not even going to suffer feel a scratch, because your soul, before that even happens, your soul is going to be taken out. The soul is the person who feels, right? As long as the soul is gone, you can do anything to the body. As long as the soul is not there, it doesn't even mean anything, because you're not even there. It's just a piece of material that means nothing. It's just a piece of earth, right? You, as far as you're concerned, you have left. So this example of the prophets and messengers, including Rashad, is a classic example of how this can happen to a person, right? And it's not just specific to messengers and prophets. This is God's promise for every believer, that you will not go to that kind of pain and misery. That is the same as it says. It's the same as death of any righteous person, right? So before, they never felt anything. I'm looking for the part.
Isn't it a bit of a stretch to say that the end of any prophet's life was easy?
It's not a stretch. No, it's not a stretch. This is God's system.
They were all ridiculed by their communities.
No.
They had a bad day. They had a hard day.
I'm talking about their death.
And they came to a difficult demise. Right? And please understand, like I'm not like, that has been substantiated. There is a precedent and all that fun stuff. And God knows all, but it seems to me like,
yeah, so it's not a stretch.
We're coming to solutions, or we're coming to conclusions that are not substantiated by the Quran. Am I incorrect on that?
You're incorrect, because these are substantiated by the Quran. So what I'm reading to you is from the Quran, and there's verses that are from the Quran. What I'm reading to you is in the appendices with references to many verses in the Quran. So if you go
I understand it's substantiated by Jesus' death. But it does not say anywhere that other people have come to such a conclusion.
Do you believe Rashad was a messenger?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Do you believe Rashad was a messenger of God?
Yes.
So do you think he's going to make up something like that?
Make up what?
What I'm reading to you is written by Rashad as a messenger, right? So when he's talking about, you haven't even...
No, hold on. And correct me if I'm wrong. I want to make sure that I'm correct on this. God willing, I'm not saying anything correct. The messenger of the covenant was explaining the death of Jesus. You are making this assumption that every other prophet and messenger was like that, which is
I'm not making the assumption that's what the messenger... No, I'm not making the assumption that's what the messenger is saying.
He said every messenger and prophet died the same way?
Yes. It's saying that the death of every righteous person is the same as the death of Jesus. That's an example for us. And if you let me read, I have the examples to show you, right? So Appendix 17, it talks about death. And it says here that the righteous do not really die. They go straight to heaven. And then it talks about their out-of-body experience. And also, there's many other verses where it talks about the death of Jesus, and it says the same thing about any righteous person. So, and the message of the covenant explains that you're not even going to suffer a scratch. So if you believe that someone who's martyred like Jesus suffers any pain, what is the reason behind even God explaining us about the death of Jesus, right? Because it's a phenomena that we need to understand, that this is God's system. And so, all I can tell you is you just have to read what you claim to believe, just read the material.
I'm not claiming to believe anything, brother.
I'm saying if you claim to be a submitter, and if you claim to believe that Rashad is a messenger, then you need to read everything that he has said about the subject before you arrive at any conclusions, right?
I haven't arrived to a conclusion. I'm questioning. find a conclusion.
No, that's what, but that's what I'm saying, right? If you say you're a submitter, you have to read what the messenger has clearly clarified in the Quran.
And just a question here, doesn't that appendices, and I just quickly went through it, doesn't that contradict where God says all people have to taste the sting of death? God says
I just
that in the Quran.
Brother, I just explained to you, death itself is separate from the retribution. The retributive disaster eventually ends up in you dying, but that in its that is not the same. Okay, everybody will die, right? Like just the same as everybody will live.
Transition.
Everybody will live, right? And everybody will die. But but the experience of how you get to that point is what makes the difference. Okay? You don't have to die of AIDS and cancer. You can die of so many other ways. So, but the thing is, these things, like for example, you can come to my house, right? Okay, I can escort you very nicely as the most important person in this world, or I can just kick you out the door and call the police and have you forcibly removed, right? So the thing is, you weren't gonna stay in my house forever, right? You were just a guest, but the way that you exited was very different. One was very nicely treated and well respected and very pleasant experience. The other was a humiliating, painful, excruciating experience that probably ended up in you, maybe, having your leg broken or whatever, So these are two different things. But the fact is that, yeah, you had to leave. You were in my house. You had to leave anyways. But how you left and how you stayed and how you were treated while you were there, the experience, that's different. So death in itself, as the messenger of the covenant explains, these are not my words. As he explained, is that it says death is not a disaster, but everybody has to die, But it says that but the retributive disaster is what happens to these people that eventually ends in death, right? When this person is at a point of no return, this is their final disaster, when they are just suffering through pain and misery, and there's no end to it, right? Eventually they're going to die, obviously, because they have to. Everybody has to. Just because they're going through their retributive disaster as part of God's system doesn't mean they are supposed to not live forever. No, they're also supposed to die as far as God is and this world is concerned. Everybody has to, but those two are not the same.
And there is one thing, brother, that, when we go through the process of death, for the righteous people and for the believers, it is going to be a simple transition, from this life to the eternal life. But for the disbelievers and the hypocrites, well, also hypocrites fall under the broader category of disbelievers, they are going to go through nightmare, okay? And that retributive disaster, which is coming upon them, for example, say the AIDS or, cancer, is because of what they have done during this lifetime, okay? And for example, if somebody was just doing homosexuality or doing so many illegitimate sexual activities, that's the retribution that they bring upon themselves. And as a result of that retributive, disaster that they have brought upon themselves, they're going to die. And they're going to die as disbelievers, and they are going to go into nightmare. Okay? I hope I've been able to explain it.
I just don't understand the blanket comment of cancer. You're an evil person. Like, I'll give you an example. I know somebody who died of cancer, didn't know they had cancer before they died. Right? Peaceful death
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, brother.
You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah. So,
let me just say something. When we are in this world, okay, there are only three categories of people. Okay, either we are believers, or we are disbelievers, or we are hypocrites. Okay, whether you know it or not, Doesn't matter. It's like, for example, the law of gravity. If somebody goes to the top of a building and says that I don't know that the law of gravity exists. I'm just, just for the hell of it, I'm just going to jump, right? Okay, whether you know the law of gravity exists or not, you're going to die. That's it, okay? Or you are going to be, seriously hurt, okay? And these people, when they do, for example, so many stuff, and they bring cancer upon their body, okay? That's a retributive disaster that they go through because they were not in God's kingdom, and they were hypocrites or they were disbelievers. Either way, they were not believers. And when you are a disbeliever or you are a hypocrite, you are going to go into nightmare. That's what it is. Doesn't matter, even if you are the nicest person on this planet Earth, even if you know that or you don't know that you had cancer, you're going to die and you're going to go into nightmare because you were among the hypocrites or the disbelievers. That's it. As easy as that. Even if you were the nicest person on earth.
Yeah, I would like to read what the messenger has said about this subject. Maybe have you watched The King of Chaos, brother?
I've watched it a couple of times, but I didn't focus on. I clearly didn't focus on this particular
So,
part.
inshallah, I'm gonna read it, and God willing, I'll try to go slow so you can focus on it. So it says, I'm just reading through some parts in the middle. God willing, I mean, I really encourage you to just watch all of it.
I can watch it on my own time, brother.
But I think we could, for the sake of the discussion now, for everybody else who's listening too, I think it definitely helps us to put the things in context. Sometimes we don't probably do justice in how we explain things. So it's better to explain as the messenger has explained it from his own mouth, rather than me putting words in his mouth or anything like that. So it says. And Satan is being tested as a god, and the results are all around us. Now, you know why the famine, the starvation, the misery, the accidents, the cancer. Satan's kingdom is plagued with these problems. On the other hand, these problems do not exist in God's kingdom. When you side with God's point of view, that is, decide that God alone is Lord of the universes, without any other idols in your life, you belong in God's kingdom. And I'm not repeating it like he's repeating it, okay? So I'm just reading what he's saying. And so he's saying, and God's kingdom has no cancer, no accidents, no headache, and no problems. God's kingdom is characterized by perfect health, perfect wealth, and perfect peace, perfect happiness. I know this sounds unbelievable, but you heard me right. God's kingdom is characterized by perfect health, perfect wealth, perfect happiness, and joy. When you choose God's point of view, you belong in God's kingdom, and you will have no headache, no problems, and no traffic tickets. I'm going to repeat that. You heard me right. When you belong in God's kingdom, you will have no headache. You will forget what headaches are. You will have no financial problems, no health problems. God runs the universes, and this is His law. If you belong in God's kingdom, there will be no accidents in your life, no misery, no marital problems, no problems of any kind. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people have sided with Satan's point of view that God alone is not enough. They do this by idolizing, setting up idols like Muhammad or Jesus or Mary or St. Francis or the boss or the dollar. They set up all kinds of idols, and when they do this, they uphold Satan's point of view, and they automatically become Satan's constituents. Any human being you look at either belongs in God's kingdom or in Satan's kingdom, whether they know it or not. There is no other choice. You either belong in God's kingdom or Satan's kingdom. How can you tell? If you have any problems whatsoever, if you have headaches, financial problems, health problems, marital problems, any kind of problems, this will be your hint that you have made the choice to side with Satan's kingdom somehow. You will have to examine your own life There is a difference between Satan's kingdom and God's kingdom. God's kingdom is characterized by perfect health, perfect wealth, and peace of mind. If you look into your life and you find that your life is full of problems and has some problems, if you come to the conclusion that you have been victimized by Satan or duped by Satan, and then he talks about like how to find out, so and then he talks about the admissions test. But yeah, I mean, just God willing, you can go through it. But he says this is God's law, and it's very consistent, for every human being. So if you are in God's kingdom, you will not even have a headache. So there's no things like AIDS and cancer in God's kingdom, right? So if you're in God's kingdom, you're not going to die of things like AIDS and cancer. I mean, you can die as the messengers did even, someone can kill you, but it's not going to be AIDS and cancer and things like that, because, you're going to be in God's kingdom if you're a righteous person. So you're not going to suffer from any misery, any pain, things like that. People who get these diseases have a very miserable life, So it's typical of that, right? And so Messenger says you're not going to have that. So, I mean, if these were like quote unquote blanket statements that, were wrong, the messenger would not be making those statements. I mean, he's authoritatively sent by God to explain these things to us, information that we didn't have in the Quran. I mean, obviously all of it is from the Quran, right? Like, for example, death of Jesus is in the Quran, but we weren't able to put it together to understand how it would be the same for any righteous person, right? I mean, we know Jesus was not anything special, right? He was just a messenger. So if you can be as righteous as Jesus or Rashad or anybody else for that matter, if you're a righteous believer, God guarantees the same for you too. And we should be happy about that, right? Because it's good news from God that we, God willing, will not have to suffer, a miserable end, right? I mean, the thing that concerns most people about getting old and dying specifically is what we're used to seeing people all around us, I mean, we're used to seeing that, right? And it sounds very unusual for us because that's the norm, because most people are going to hell. So most people that go, have issues like that, they're, especially cancer, right? Everybody's dying of cancer. There's one woman who claims to be a submitter, and she said, quote unquote, she said, don't listen to everything Rashad says. And she says, we're all going to die of cancer, right? So it's very hard for people to accept that because they're just used to seeing people. But the thing is, for us to be at that level, like, we're not even going to get to that level if we don't even think such a thing is possible, right? But these are strong words. This is God's promise. He says, that you're not even going to get a scratch if you're in God's kingdom, right? So having things like AIDS and cancer, I mean, is really, another level of being a disbeliever. And so people, so go ahead.
I have a question. So, I know the messenger says angels are the best surgeons. So say if somebody like at a job or something got exposed to, some bad chemicals or something, you're early in their age or whatever, these things aren't good for the body, and if they obviously aren't working that job anymore and eating healthy and all that, God will still protect that person, right? Like if from any bad
I mean, the messenger of the covenant talks about, he said, even if there's like a nuclear explosion, God will figure out a way to protect the believers, So, yeah.
Yeah, like even radioactive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll talk about that another time. MashaAllah, thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
Mashallah, great discussion. I just want to add something that if someone happens to listen to this audio now or the discussion or later, just there's some idea that actually the messenger said that every time you enter into a covenant with God, God believes you. So if someone is listening to us and they're like suffering from something, they're not submitters yet, and they every time they repent and reform, they enter God, they enter into the admission process. And if someone believes, all I'm trying to say that if someone believes, even if they already have inflicted themselves by cancer, God can heal that. But all the cure is in believing. The cure is seriously believing in reforming, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I don't want to. I mean, I guess it's a public platform. It's no big deal. But I've radioactive material, small amounts. So I was just wondering because I know they down the road they say that if you depending on the amount and quantity, 20 years from now. But I don't think I really
Yeah,
got much
but I mean,
exposure.
if you know that, you shouldn't continue
Right.
exposing yourself to things like that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
No, thank you for the explanation and going more into depth. God willing, it will serve a purpose, more so than just me.
Yeah, inshallah, brother. Inshallah. Anybody else has any comments?
I just wanted to piggyback on what you just read from the messenger. MashaAllah, it was absolutely completely obvious what the messenger was saying. So we have two situations. We have one situation that you are in God's kingdom, and we have one situation that you are in Satan's kingdom. So if you're in Satan's kingdom, that's the manifestation of you being in the Satan's kingdom. Okay. So if you have diseases, if you have financial problems, if you have marital problems, it means that there's something wrong. And if you're in God's kingdom, then you wouldn't have any of those things. You will have absolutely perfect happiness. And the thing is that we should not try to fallicize, create fallacy out of this, the things that the messenger is saying. It's very clear. We cannot, if we are not in that 100% happy situation that we must be and we are promised to, it's us. It's not the message. Okay, so we have to look at our life and see what's going on with our life and try to dissect it like a surgeon. Try to go deep into the tissue and see what the problem is, that we are not getting that 100% happiness, 100% financial, sturdity and strength, and 100% health and 100% no problem whatsoever. We have to go deep into ourselves and see what the problem is with us.
Yeah, and most of the time, if you do that, yeah, most of the time when you do that, you'll find out. God will make it clear for you. Yeah.
Exactly, mashallah. Yes, exactly, mashallah. I mean, when we go deep down, we see that there was this problem that I didn't know even existed, and if we get help from God and ask for His help to show us the problem, and when we find the problem, show us the solution. Subhanallah, you will be shown the solution, and the problem will be gone forever. But the problem is that if we try to say that, okay, the problem is created when we want to say that, no, it doesn't exist, this 100% happiness doesn't exist. We start to make fallacies, and then we start to change the message, and that's when we become hypocrites. We have to be very careful of that. Inshallah, God help us to stay with the strength on this path. Inshallah.
Yeah, mashallah. Also, Brother Salami posted a verse, verse 21. I don't see the surah number, but it says, "We let them taste the small retribution of this world before they incur the greater retribution of the hereafter, that they may take a hint and reform." Right? Yeah, and so but the retributive disaster, in particular, that we're talking about, I mean, it it comes at a point where there is no reform, right? As we read about these people, they were at a point where there was no reform, and there was just, their test was over, and there was no reason for them to even be tested at that point, and so they just were kicked out and humiliated and exit. So
And brother Justin, this is heavy information. It's not easy for us to take because it's against all the people's ideas. And I personally lost a loved one who I thought to be a good person, but then after they were humiliated and they died a humiliated death, a bad death. I realized what they were doing wrong in their life. So it's not easy, especially when it comes to our loved ones, that they are not, they're no longer our loved ones, after this information. But, it's not easy to see that someone ended up in hell. But if that's what we should do, that should accept God's justice. That's all we can do. Inshallah.
Absolutely. Thank you, sister, for I appreciate everybody's help in making me understand. I'm very grateful for the experience. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to say, it's true, because I've talked to like my neighbor and stuff about that, and you can just see conditioning of most people. How it's hard because they're so used to problems in their lives, you know what I mean? Because I guess, at one point, we all were, but, thank God we have the Quran and the Messenger to make these matters and clarify them for us.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, everyone.
I'm welcome, brother and son.
Yeah. So I want to
someone
share.
is not muted.
You can.
Sorry, I see some people in the background. Is that you?
I think I'm in the office. Maybe
Oh, you're at
there's
work?
other.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me go somewhere.
There's some very talkative people in your office.
Yes. One second. Yeah, once. Yeah, so I want to share about this, about this, like the disease. The messenger also explained, so when you become a submitter, so maybe you will have some, like pinch. Maybe you get a ticket. Maybe you eat some mistake. Maybe you have some fever, but it will be curable. It will not give you. It will not, will make any permanent damage for your health. So if you become ultimate submitter, so you will have no issue, no headache, no ticket. So this is a good thing. So when we claim we are a submitter, so if we have any situation, we lost, we are losing like kidney, we are losing our organ, or we have a cancer, some kind of disease, it's not curable. So that means this is a good thing. Then we can verify ourselves what we are doing. Maybe we are not doing submission properly. So then we can correct ourselves before we die. So so this is a good thing. So in God kingdom, when you go to heaven, so there is no disease, right? So this situation will start from here. When we become ultimate submitter, we have no issue, no disease, no headache. So it makes sense. It makes logical. So God kingdom, the heaven, actually the step from this world. But if we do mistake, if we do any sin, even we become a submitter, but we have some little bit consequences, but not permanent and damage in our body. That's understood from the verses of the Quran. The messenger explain whatever he explained. So that's my conclusion. And also another thing I want to point it out, when I became a submitter, I see so many submitter who claim submitter, they have some financial problem from long time. So when you become a submitter, so if you have a financial problem from couple of years, so that means we have to verify ourselves. Are we doing submission properly, practicing our religion properly? Why you will have financial problems year to year? So that's also we have to consideration. Some people, they're tricking, get the money from the submitter. They claim they are submitter, but they have some financial problem from 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. How? When you become a submitter, you will have no issue. Also, you will not have financial issue. Maybe you will have some trouble a little bit, maybe because you do some mistake, but you will not have also financial problem. So that's also we have to think. If you have any financial problem, any big problem, big issues, so that means our submission is not correct. So that's I want to share, brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
My
mashallah.
understanding.
Yeah,
Inshallah.
another point I wanted to
MashaAllah.
make was I think we discussed persecution, right? That these the messengers were persecuted, right? And so I think being persecuted is a totally separate thing, right? For example, not being able to enjoy good health and having a perfect life in terms of your happiness is a separate thing. You know, you can be, you can, persecution as opposed to having financial problems or health problems is something that, you know, you get a special place for you reserved in heaven for going through, like you, but you can't say the same, for example, health problems. You can't say, well, I went through so many health problems, so I'm going to have a special place for me in heaven because of it, you know. But God says that, you know, for people who are persecuted because of me, you know, there is a special place for those people. I mean, they obviously their rankings are increased because of that, and they have a special place, as the Messenger of the Covenant explains, as a result of being persecuted, right? So I think that's something that we should not be confused with.
I think I could, inshallah.
MashaAllah.
You go ahead, brother.
No, I just wanted to say MashaAllah. No, go ahead, brother.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna elaborate on what Solomon was saying. I'm thinking there's more, I guess you could say, righteous points added towards you, because on one side of the coin, persecution is happening to you, or on the other side, you are like inflicting yourself with wrongdoings, and like that's like the retribution for what you've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I also have like a, off-topic question, but it's somehow related to the topic that we are talking about. I don't know. Can I ask it now, brother, or
Yeah,
shall we
sure.
leave it for the later
Sure.
time?
I mean, we're almost coming to an
Yes.
end.
So yes.
Ask.
Okay, mashallah. So yeah, okay. So my question is that, there is this situation that at work, that, for example, when people see that your coworkers see that, you are doing your salat, and then you're focused on religion, and, it's just, it's a situation for you that, sorry, let me just, I needed to take this parking. So
You're getting a
so the
ticket.
thing is that, yeah, sorry. Yeah, the parking ticket. So take the parking
No, I
ticket.
know.
So I had to take it. So, mashallah. So the thing is that, so when you're like somehow, I wouldn't say persecuted, but people laugh at you, and then they say that, oh, how do we know that there is another world? And I have to repeat myself 10,000 times, all the time, that you stupid people, and not that I'm not
Sing it out loud.
saying anything, but yeah. No, I'm not trying to say that they're stupid or anything, or I do not insult them. But the thing is that, I have to repeat myself in an amicable way, and I have to say that, okay, the messenger of God, Dr. Rashad Khalifa, and then, miracle of 19, and I have to repeat and repeat and repeat. And again, it just, obviously because of the verse of Quran, we know that it just, hits a wall and then drops down. And again, the next day it is repeated and again and again and again. So my question is that when it comes to a situation that you see that these people are saying stuff which are clearly wrong and against the verses of Quran, for example, we have a chapter on woe on cheaters, chapter 83, okay? And you see that how these people, pride, show pride in what they are doing. That, for example, they found a way to watch TV for free and not pay, for example, Disney Plus. You know what I mean? Okay. And then when they just bring it to you and talk to co-workers about it, and you see that other disbelievers or hypocrites also praise them and say that, oh, good for you, you found a way to just make this evil companies go down and stuff like that. You're not giving them money. And I say that, no, that's cheating, that's stealing, okay? And then a whole topic is just brought up. And then I say that it is from Quran and we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that, and explain it. And this is just one example of 1,000 examples that come up, My question is that if I don't say anything at that moment, would there be the possibility of me being claimed or not? Because I cannot just leave the room anytime that they are bringing a stupid topic up, and it's exactly against the Quran, and they have a miserable life because of their disbelief. My question is that, will I be claimed if I don't say anything, or should I just say the topic and bring it up and say that this is wrong, that is wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong? And in the end, I say that you can do whatever you want to do. I'm saying that you're allowed to do whatever you want to do. I'm just saying this to say that, well, you are wrong. So my question is that, what should I do on a daily basis with these disbelievers and hypocrites, inshallah?
Yeah, I guess I'm more interested in finding out how to watch Disney Plus without paying for the subscription. I'm just kidding. Okay, so no, I think this is something that we discussed before. So yeah, I'm just kidding. So yeah, so I mean, the thing is, we can't control what people do or what people say, or what they think, right? I mean, your job is to, at the most, remind them and let them know. And if it doesn't stick with them and they continue to be, practice what they want or say whatever they want, they're responsible for their actions, right? And you're responsible for your actions. So at that point, really, it's not your responsibility to even tell them. You can say to people a few times, I would say, if you think that they didn't hear you right the first time or something like that, right? But then there comes a point where you just let them do whatever they want, So, God says in the Quran, do whatever you want, and so wait, and I'm also waiting, and things like that, right? So, and you just let them, ignore them, let them do whatever they want, basically.
MashaAllah. Yeah.
Maybe can I say something to your point? Because I'm in a similar situation with coworkers and stuff. But to your question, can you be claimed? I think what Brother Selman was saying, do your best. And we know as mentors, it's our mission to warn people. So when the opportunity comes up, in a situation where they're talking, and then you just come around and they say something to you or whatever, where you're just brought in and it's a topic where you can elaborate on, I think it's your duty to elaborate that point once or a few times. But you'll know if it's not worth to continue to elaborate, if they take no interest in you, well, not even just in you, but in what you're saying, with it being the truth. So I think as long as you strive to answer what's going on, I think you'll be okay. But yeah, that's as far as I can think.
Yeah, sometimes.
MashaAllah, the thing is that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I'm
No, I
saying
just
like,
wanted to say that it's the situation. So let me just go ahead. Then. So the thing is that so for example, for this idea of watching stuff free of charge or finding a way to just you know watch videos or movies free of charge without paying the price for watching them. I have developed a theory for myself, and it's very just I think it's very clear cut. It doesn't require a very sharp mind even to understand that. And I say that, okay, so will you go to a shop and shoplift something and come out? No, you don't do that. So you shouldn't go, like, you shouldn't watch something that you haven't paid the price for. That's my theory. And I say that some people say that, no, why shouldn't we watch it? These are evil companies and so on and so forth. And I say that, well, okay, them being evil companies has nothing to do with you watching stuff illegally. That's my point, okay? Even if they're evil companies or whatever, it's none of your business. You don't want to watch them. You say that they are evil companies. Okay, don't pay them. Don't watch their stuff, right? You're not
Right.
in that situation to what do we call it? Judge them, Even if you want to judge them, go ahead and judge them, but don't watch their stuff. Why do you want to watch their stuff for free? Because you think that you're a better person. You're like Robin Hood. You're stealing from them, So the thing is that they have crooked understanding. Yes, mashallah, Brother John says stealing is stealing, and the thing is that now I go back to the previous point that there was a time that we were living in Iran, and there was no copyright there, and there were websites like, for example, downloading these movies for free, and then putting it on their websites and even selling it to the people with the currency of Iran, and we were buying them or not buying them, just downloading them for free, and we had a miserable life, because I could relate to that. I was trying to tell them that, okay, this thing that you're doing in the United States while you can pay for it, this is stealing, and you're gonna end up having a miserable life, more miserable than what your miserable hypocritical life already is. So that's what I was trying to do, mashallah.
so yeah,
But amicably.
I'm still trying to figure out how they can get Disney Plus without even paying for it. Like
Yeah,
movies, I know there's. No, I'm just curious, like, like how they would do that.
Yeah, the guy was even explaining it to me. I said that I'm not interested.
It's like maybe they make a trial account and cancel it or something.
I have
Yeah,
no
because
idea.
the
He
thing
was
is,
explaining it. And I
yeah,
was so,
the thing is, like,
yeah.
if a company allows you to have a trial,
No, it was not a trial. No, it was
Right,
not a trial.
right.
They were doing it through a third-party website, and that was another, stealer, another robber, another thief.
Okay.
That was just like giving it to them somehow. I don't know how they were doing, like some sort of hacking or stuff.
Yeah, they even sell these devices and stuff. I've had a few people I know like these that do that. But yeah, I think they're just trying to justify, because it's easy to sit there and justify stealing for them to point fingers. Oh, that's an evil company, so now I have the right to go steal from them. Like, no, because I mean, what if let's just say, what if they're wrong? I mean, I'm not I'm not one to, but just for argument's sake, I mean, if people were to adopt that logic, you could tell them, I mean, not that you want to talk to them again, but that I could go walk into Walmart and say, oh, Walmart did this bad thing, so I could steal from Walmart, get me some free fruit or food or something.
I wanted to say something because I actually have this website that I go to, and it has free movies. But like when the movie drops, it's not in HD. They take like a week or a month or two for it to come in HD. But I never really thought of it as heavy as Brother Mashud thought of it. And like my first thought was like, well, that's like a very high moral. You have very high morals, because like I never really thought of it as stealing so deeply. I just like, I found this website where there's free movies and I can watch them for free. So yeah, I just want to point that out. I'm thinking maybe I should I don't know, maybe change some things around with that type of mindset that Brother Mashur just explained an example.
Yeah.
MashaAllah,
Yeah, I mean,
brother.
God
MashaAllah.
says that, only mutually acceptable transactions are permitted, right? So someone who, owns the material, if they don't approve of that transaction, it's not according to their terms, they don't want it to be for free, and you're somehow getting it. If someone's giving you their material for free and it's their choice, you're not committing any sin, right? But if they don't approve of it, the creator doesn't approve of it, and other people are giving it away, then obviously, you're doing it wrong. So
Yeah, mashallah, brother. And I think that the copyright, law is a law that creates, improvement. Because if it didn't exist, there would have been many people, like many movie makers or many authors, who wouldn't have come up with, writing the stuff that they are writing or making the stuff that they are making, as well as, like, for example, saying that, for example, getting the software for free. That's another problem. For example, we have Microsoft and we have, like, for example, Apple company, that they are doing their, they're doing their share for improving the technology. Okay. And if we say that, okay, oh, these are evil companies, let's do this, we can just, have them for free. Let's not pay for example, the I don't know, the key for Microsoft Windows, or the key for Microsoft Word or Excel, or Office. That would be, I would say that that's also stealing. So that's stealing is stealing. And I can vividly see that how a country like Iran, where I come from, is so miserable, because everything is just like there. There's no copyright. People are not paying the price for the stuff that they are using, and that's adding to the to the misery that they have, and that's a direct result of that. And you see that how, Alhamdulillah, United States is prosperous because people are paying the price for the stuff that they are getting. If you don't do that, you're not going to be able to enjoy your life to the fullest amount possible. Subhanallah.
yeah, mashallah, I think another interesting, speaking of paying the price, right? The thing is that God is the one who has predetermined, our provisions and how much we're gonna get, right? And if you are gonna go ahead and like steal, for example, like you think you're gonna save money, you're gonna end up paying that money in some other way, right? Like you'd either have an accident, or some other kind of fine, or some other kind of problem where you maybe end up paying more than what you could have just paid for that software or service. So we have to remember that, like if you're trying to save money here this way, it's gonna come out some other way. I mean, I've had some very interesting experiences with that, So um, yeah, don't look for such ways and shortcuts. I mean, yeah, the money, God has several ways of giving us money and taking the money from us, so we have to be careful.
Yes, mashallah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your comments, brothers. Mashallah.
So, any other questions? Anyone? Yeah, Jaffer says someone buys it and borrows it to others for free. Like one guy buys the CD and you gather and watch it all together online. Yeah, I mean that's not stealing. Obviously, I mean it is within the persons or people who have created the material. I mean it's acceptable to them, right? So if it wasn't acceptable to them, and they said no, only one person is supposed to, it's only for one person, you pay per person, then you'd have to honor that, right? So that's how it works, right? I mean, it's really up to the person who creates the material, who sets the price, right? If I create something and I set the price, I mean, if you want to buy it, then you have to accept it. Otherwise, don't buy it. Go buy something else.
Mashallah. Mashallah. But that's what they what the stealing part was, that what was being done, for example, in my country, that one person bought the original CD or the DVD and started making copies and burning different DVDs and CDs and selling them to the public. That would have been absolutely stealing and thievery.
Yeah, that's like redistribution. Over here, you can get big trouble. I don't know what the laws are like out there, but man, they 250,000 prison time and stuff. I actually know somebody that was doing that with Photoshop several years back, and they got a letter in the mail. You know, back when Suleiman, some of y'all might be remember LimeWire. You know, that was popular in the early 2000s. You know, a lot of but yeah, that happened. Somebody. But yeah, just a warning. It was actually from the ISP, the internet service provider.
Right. Yeah, the internet service provider can detect if you're downloading you know, torrents
and some people, they try to get around it by these little what do they call them, proxies and stuff. But I mean, even if they can, it's not worth it. But yeah, like nothing's wrong with like if you go buy a DVD and then, you know, go over to somebody's house and we watch the movie together. You know, but like if they're redistributing them, you know, they're probably getting money for them too. And they didn't get permission, you know, like Suleiman said, it wasn't.
Yeah, but you know, the thing is, when you talk about countries like Iran, for example, they don't have access to genuine stuff in some places, right? For example, like movies, like they're not even officially distributed for certain countries. At least I know for Pakistan that was the case, you know. Like they don't even officially do business there, and the only thing that might be available in certain cases would be, you know, pirated material. And you know, in other, I mean, in many places, people might be forced by circumstance to use it, like students and stuff. So
right,
yeah, but you know, of course, there's no excuse for people here to do similar things, you know.
Yes. Yes, mashallah. Exactly, that's my point. We are in the United States, or like say in Canada or in Europe, we have access to
true. Yeah, that's true.
Exactly, we can pay for it, and there is no way out of it. And Iran or Pakistan or say Afghanistan, I agree, because people are forced. But even in that situation, it's a grayish area in this sense that it's still, you know, stealing and thievery, but you know, probably not to the higher extent of redistributing the material. Okay, like you just get it and download it and watch it and then delete it. But then if you download it and start burning CD and selling it to the other people, that would be thievery. So
a lot of them will probably be even willing to pay for it. But like, yeah, y'all said, I didn't know that about those countries.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Did you guys? Well, I guess some people saw it. Instagram, the parrot. Says it's time for prayer.
MashaAllah. Yeah, if I ever get a parrot, we need to teach them their day.
Allahu Akbar. Time to pray. Allahu Akbar.
Did you hear that? Anyways.
Subhanallah, I just watched it. That was really beautiful. Subhanallah.
Mashallah. So I guess if there are no other comments or questions, God willing, we can conclude the study. So
yes, inshallah.
Inshallah. So thank you, Brother Justin, for leading the study. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.